The December wind cut through my thin jacket as I stood on the doorstep of the Mason family estate, watching my mother-in-law's perfectly manicured hand wave goodbye before she slammed the heavy oak door in my face. I placed one hand protectively over my growing belly, trying to process how quickly everything had fallen apart. My name is Emma Chin, and at 28 years old, I found myself pregnant, alone, and locked out of what had been my home for the past 3 years. But Victoria Mason had no idea what she'd just done, or who she was really dealing with. "You'll thank me for this later, James," I heard her say through the door to my husband. "She was never good enough for you. No connections, no family money, just some scholarship girl who got lucky." I waited for James to defend me, to say something. Anything. But his silence spoke volumes. The same silence that had grown between us over the past few months as his mother's influence poisoned everything we built together. The irony was, Victoria Mason was right about one thing. I had gotten lucky, but not in the way she thought. 3 years ago, I was a software engineer fresh out of MIT, working on an AI algorithm that could revolutionize supply chain management. James and I met at a tech conference where I was presenting my research. He was there representing his family's shipping company, Mason Global Logistics. It was love at first sight, at least that's what I thought. The wedding was rushed, small, intimate. Victoria never approved, but James had insisted. "We don't need their blessing," he'd said back then. "We just need each other." Those words felt hollow now as I stood in the cold, watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air. What Victoria didn't know was that for the past year, I'd been building something in secret, something that would change everything. The algorithm I'd been developing wasn't just theoretical anymore, it was ready. And while Victoria was busy planning charity galas and criticizing my common background, I'd been quietly meeting with investors, securing patents, and laying the groundwork for my own company. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly from both cold and adrenaline, and dialed the one person I knew I could count on. "Maya, it's happening." They kicked me out. Maya Chen, my older sister and brilliant corporate lawyer, didn't miss a beat. "I'm on my way. The apartment is ready. Time to launch Plan B." I could hear her grabbing her keys, the determination in her voice giving me strength. Maya had always been my rock, especially after we lost our parents in the accident 10 years ago. She was the one who had encouraged me to keep working on my algorithm even after I married James. "Never put all your eggs in one basket, little sister," she'd warned me, especially not a golden one. As I waited for Maya, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with James earlier that morning. He'd found the prenatal vitamins in my drawer, and instead of being happy about the baby, he looked worried. "Did you plan this?" he'd asked, his voice tight. "Is this some kind of trap?" The accusation had stunned me. Trap? "James, we're married. We talked about having children." "Mother thinks the timing is suspicious," he'd said, running his hands through his hair. "With the company's merger coming up." I should have seen it then, how deeply his mother's paranoia had infected him. How the sweet, supportive man I'd married had become just another puppet in Victoria Mason's grand plan for her family's dynasty. Maya's sleek black Tesla pulled up to the curb, and she jumped out, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "Those pretentious snobs," she muttered, helping me with my bags. "Just wait until they see what's coming." As we drove away from the Mason estate, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Victoria thought she was protecting her family's empire by getting rid of me. She had no idea she'd just set in motion exactly what I'd been waiting for. Maya glanced at me as she navigated through the city streets. "You okay? The stress isn't good for the baby." I placed a hand on my belly, feeling a small kick. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Remember how you told me to always have a backup plan?" She nodded, turning onto the highway that led to her downtown apartment building. "Well," I said, pulling out my laptop, "I have something to show you. That algorithm I've been working on, it's not just theoretical anymore. I've been running simulations using Mason Global's shipping data that James gave me access to when we first got married." Maya's eyes widened. "Emma, what exactly have you been up to?" I opened my laptop, showing her the results of my latest simulation. I've created an AI-driven logistics system that can predict supply chain disruptions before they happen, optimize shipping routes in real time, and reduce costs by up to 40%. I call it ChainSight, and you've tested this using Mason Global's data?" I nodded. James gave me full access to their systems when we got married. He wanted me to understand the family business. Victoria was furious about it, but he insisted. I've been running simulations for months, perfecting the algorithm. Maya pulled into her building's parking garage, turning to face me fully. Emma, do you realize what you have here? I do, I said, closing my laptop. And so do the venture capitalists I've been meeting with. They're ready to fund Chainsite's launch. We're just waiting for my signal. Maya's face broke into a wide grin. And Victoria just gave you the perfect reason to launch. As we rode the elevator to Maya's penthouse apartment, I thought about Victoria's smug face as she pushed me out the door. She thought she was getting rid of a gold digger, a nobody who trapped her precious son. Instead, she just freed me to become her biggest competitor. Maya's apartment was everything the Mason estate wasn't: modern, minimal, and warm. She'd set up the guest room for me weeks ago, just in case. My sister had always been the pragmatic one. Get some rest, she said, helping me unpack. Tomorrow, we start making calls. It's time to show the Masons what a nobody from nowhere can really do. That night, as I lay in bed, my hand resting on my growing belly, I felt stronger than I had in months. Victoria thought she was protecting her family's legacy. Instead, she'd just given me the push I needed to build my own. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Mother says this is for the best. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Let him think I was broken, devastated. Let Victoria believe she won. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my lead investor, Sarah Chen, no relation, though we joked about it. Ready when you are. Say the word and we'll start the funding round. I looked out Maya's window at the city skyline, where Mason Global's headquarters dominated the view. Soon, they'd see my company's name up there too. But first, I had work to do. Maya was already up, making breakfast and taking calls. She cleared her schedule for the next week to help me set everything in motion. As I walked into the kitchen, she handed me a prenatal vitamin and a glass of orange juice. The team's ready, she said, hanging up her phone. We can file the incorporation papers today. You're sure about this? I took the vitamin, thinking about James' accusation yesterday. Had I planned this? Not exactly. But I'd been prepared for it, thanks to Maya's constant warnings and my own instincts. I'm sure, I said, pulling out my laptop. Victoria wants a war. Let's give her one. Maya smiled, that fierce, protective smile I'd known all my life. Then let's get to work. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, calls, and paperwork. Maya's law firm handled everything efficiently, and by the end of the week, Chainsite was officially incorporated. The initial funding round was oversubscribed. It seemed every investor in town wanted a piece of what we were building. James tried calling several times, but I let everything go to voicemail. His messages grew increasingly anxious as news of Chainsite's incorporation spread through the business community. Emma, what are you doing? His last message demanded. Mother's furious. She says you stole company secrets. We could sue you for this. I played the message for Maya, who just laughed. Let them try. Every bit of data you used was legally accessed with full permission. We have James's emails proving it. She was right, of course. I documented everything meticulously, knowing this day might come. Victoria Mason hadn't raised an idiot for a son. She just never expected his wife to be smarter than he was. As I ended part one of my story here, I was just getting started. Victoria Mason thought she'd taught me a lesson about knowing my place. Instead, she'd given me exactly what I needed: freedom to build something that would change everything. Not just for me and my baby, but for the entire industry she thought she controlled. The real question was, what would happen when she realized exactly what she'd done? 6 months after Victoria Mason slammed her door in my face, I stood in front of a packed conference room at the National Logistics Convention. My hand rested on my now visible baby bump as I prepared to demonstrate Chainsite to the industry's biggest players. The irony wasn't lost on me that Mason Global's leadership team sat in the front row, Victoria and James among them. Victoria's face was set in its usual mask of cold disdain, but I could see the tension in her jaw. James just looked pale. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady despite the flutter of movement in my belly. What you're about to see will revolutionize how we think about supply chain management. As I launched into the demonstration, showing real-time optimization of shipping routes and predictive analytics that could save companies millions. I watched Victoria's expression shift from dismissive to concerned. By the time I showed the cost-saving projections, she was gripping her armrest so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The past 6 months had been intense. Maya and I had worked around the clock, building the company from her penthouse apartment. Our team grew quickly, brilliant engineers and developers who believed in the vision. The pregnancy hadn't been easy, but every kick from my baby felt like a reminder of why I was doing this. Victoria had tried everything to stop us. First came the cease and desist letters, claiming I'd stolen proprietary information. Maya's legal team shut that down quickly, producing documentation of every permission James had given me to access their systems. Then came the whisper campaign, rumors about my character, my background, suggestions that I was unstable. But Victoria had underestimated how much the industry was ready for change. ChainSite's early trials with smaller shipping companies had produced results that couldn't be ignored. "Any questions?" I asked as I concluded the presentation. The room erupted with raised hands, but Victoria was already on her feet. "This is nothing but smoke and mirrors," she announced, her voice sharp. "Ms. Chen claims her system can reduce costs by 40%, but where's the proof? Mason Global has been in this industry for generations. We know what's possible and what isn't." I smiled, having anticipated this moment. "Excellent question, Mrs. Mason. Perhaps your son can help answer it, since he's seen the system in action." All eyes turned to James, who looked like he wanted to disappear. He knew exactly what I was referring to. The trial runs I'd done using Mason Global's data, the ones he'd enthusiastically approved before his mother poisoned everything. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but his face betrayed him. "Really?" I pulled up a series of emails on the screen behind me. "Because according to these messages, you were quite impressed with the initial results. In fact, you called them revolutionary and suggested implementing them company-wide." Victoria's face turned scarlet. The emails were damning, not just for their content, but because they proved every accusation she'd made about me stealing company secrets was false. James had been my biggest supporter right up until she turned him against me. After the presentation, investors swarmed around me. Maya handled most of them, her legal expertise proving invaluable as we fielded partnership offers and investment proposals. I noticed James hovering at the edge of the crowd, looking lost. Finally, he approached me as the room began to clear. Victoria was nowhere in sight. "Emma," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The man I'd fallen in love with seemed smaller somehow, diminished. "About what, James? About how you let your mother kick out your pregnant wife? Or about how you've spent the last 6 months trying to destroy what I've built?" He flinched. "I didn't know about the baby, about any of it." Mother said. "That's the problem." I cut him off. Mother said. "Mother thinks. Mother knows best. When was the last time you thought for yourself?" "The company's stock dropped 15% after your presentation," he said, changing tactics. Mother's furious. "The board is asking questions. Maybe we could work something out." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Now you want to work something out? After everything?" "You're still my wife," he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "Actually, I'm not. The divorce papers were delivered to your office this morning. Maya's firm handled everything. You should read them carefully, especially the part about the baby." His face fell. "Emma, please. That's my child, too." "Yes," I agreed. "And you'll have visitation rights once they're born. But you lost the right to be their father the day you chose your mother over your family." Maya appeared at my elbow, right on cue. "Everything okay here?" James stepped back, his shoulders thumping. I'm sorry, Emma, for everything." "I'm not," I said honestly. "Everything that happened led me here. ChainSite is already revolutionizing the industry, and we're just getting started. So thank your mother for me, James. She gave me exactly what I needed, freedom." As he walked away, Maya squeezed my arm. "You okay?" I nodded, watching James disappear into the crowd. "Better than okay. Did you see the partnership offers we got today? 6 major shipping companies want to implement ChainSite immediately," Maya confirmed. "And that's just the beginning. Victoria's worst nightmare is coming true. You're not just competing with Mason Global. You're going to surpass them." 2 weeks later, I sat in my new office, reviewing the latest performance reports. Chainsight was growing faster than even our most optimistic projections had predicted. Companies were switching to our system in droves, drawn by the cost savings and efficiency improvements. Mason Global's stock had continued to fall as investors questioned their ability to compete in the changing landscape. I'd heard through industry gossip that Victoria had been forced to step down from the board, though she was fighting it every step of the way. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Maya entered, waving a tablet. "You need to see this," she said, pulling up a news article. The headline made me catch my breath. Mason Global Logistics announces major restructuring. CEO James Mason steps down. He's leaving the company? I asked, scanning the article. Maya nodded. Word is he's starting his own venture, something about embracing innovation and new directions in logistics. I sat back, absently rubbing my belly where the baby was kicking. His mother must be beside herself. Oh, she is, Maya grinned. But that's not all. Look at the last paragraph. I read it and felt a strange mix of emotions. In a surprising move, James Mason has expressed interest in potential collaborations with emerging industry leaders, specifically citing Chainsight's revolutionary approach to supply chain management. What do you think? Maya asked. Should we hear him out? I thought about it, remembering the man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd been excited about innovation before his mother's influence took over. Maybe, free from Victoria's control, that man still existed somewhere. Set up a meeting, I decided. But make it clear, this is business, nothing more. If he wants to work with Chainsight, he'll need to prove himself just like anyone else. Maya nodded, understanding perfectly. And Victoria? I smiled, thinking of my former mother-in-law and her grand plans for her family's legacy. She can watch from the sidelines as everything she tried to protect gets transformed by the nobody from nowhere she threw out in the cold. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and I placed both hands on my belly. In 2 months, I'd be a mother myself. But unlike Victoria, I would teach my child that true legacy isn't about maintaining control. It's about having the courage to create something new. Victoria had thought she was protecting her son's inheritance when she kicked me out that cold December day. Instead, she triggered a revolution in the industry she thought she controlled, led by the very person she'd underestimated most. As I looked out my office window at the city skyline, where the Chainsight logo now shone as brightly as Mason Global's, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about soaring higher than your enemies ever thought possible.